Hi everyone, I just wanted to get a quick review of CINAHL, which is a database that we examined on Wednesday in our Zoom meeting. So to get to CINAHL, you're going to click on Databases and then click on the letter C, and here's CINAHL. And CINAHL stands for the Cumulative Index of Nursing and Allied Health. So it has a lot of the same content as PubMed or Medline, but it has more of a focus on the psychosocial, health education. There's a lot of OT, PT, SLPA content in here, things that you won't find in Medline. But again, there is overlap between the two. So let's say that I'm looking for articles about hearing loss and cochlear implants in children. So if I type in my keyword of hearing loss, and again, in EBSCO, when you type in a keyword, you can then connect it with synonyms by typing in or. It will, by default, give you a bunch of different terms to consider. So I'm going to grab this first list here, which I can edit or add or delete terms if I'd like. I can use the truncation strategy, where typing in deaf and putting in the asterisks there, it'll search for deaf, deafness, so on and so forth. Hearing impairment, I can actually put that in quotes since it's a phrase, and it will make sure that those terms are in the same exact order. And I could do that with this as well, hard of hearing. So just to make a point of those strategies that we've been talking about and learning, that you can use those right here. So let's say that we're interested in articles about cochlear implants. So again, if I type in or, it's going to give me some other terms as suggestions. And I can see there's cochlear implant with a singular plural and implantation. And then there's auditory prosthesis. I think I'm going to just stick with cochlear implant and put an asterisk there so it'll search all of the different variations: implant, implants, implantation. And I'm going to add in my population of children, and I'm going to truncate that as well. So super simple, basic keyword search. We've connected them correctly with the ands. That's all set up by default, and all of our synonyms, we've ordered them correctly. So we have three concepts that we're searching: hearing loss, cochlear implants, and then our population of children. Click search, and we're going to get a lot of results. So over 3,000 results. I'm just going to pull up a couple of these quickly. Let's go with this one here. Let's just take a quick look at the record. And so what I wanted to bring your attention to is what we talked about, is that in CINAHL, there's something called CINAHL headings similar to the MESH headings. And we've also referred to these as the hashtags or the subject terms that all databases use to describe what an article is about. So hearing disorder and cochlear implant are considered major concepts of this article, along with early intervention, treatment outcomes. These are other terms that describe what this article is about. And then we have what are called minor subjects. So going back to my search up here, I can start to play around if I want to limit my concepts to be a major concept. I can limit my keywords. Another thing I can do is I see hearing disorders is one of the major concepts. And when I look at my terms here, I don't even have that listed. So I'm going to right here type in hearing disorders just because I see it there. And so that's a good clue that I should probably have that term in my search. So let's just run a quick search again. We should get more than 3,164 because I've added in hearing disorders. And we did. And I can also, again, truncate this. Hearing disorders, hearing disorders. I could put this in quotes as well. So lots of different strategies that you can play around with at any time in your search, and it will change your search results. It might increase them, it might decrease them, depending on what you do. So to the right of our keywords, there is a drop-down box here, select a field. We've looked at this in other databases. And so, yes, there's the abstract and the title, but what there's also instead in CINAHL is what is called the CINAHL headings, similar to the MESH headings. And so we've got a few different variations. It is, to be honest, a little weird and confusing in the way that it's set up. But basically what it's saying here is if you want your term to be a major concept or just a regular concept, not a major concept. So if we select word in a major concept, it's saying that one of the terms would be a subject heading If you know that it's the exact subject heading, you can go with that. So for sure, hearing disorders, I had just seen that a second ago, that was an exact term. I typed it in because I hadn't included that originally. But if you go with the word in, meaning one of the words might be a major concept, that just gives you a little more flexibility. So we can do that. We can say that we want this to be the exact, because we only have one term here, cochlear implant, and I saw that that was the exact subject heading for cochlear implant. And now we can click search, and we're going to get a different set of results, and it's a smaller set. And then child, perhaps we want that to be a major subject heading. Perhaps we want it to be in the title. So you can play around with this. There isn't a correct way to play around and tinker with your search. And of course, it will refine and change your results. Haven't even really looked at these results yet. Another thing to point out is in CINAHL, just like in the Medline version, the EBSCO version of Medline, below the publication date area, there's a little option here where it says Show More. I wish this was more prominent, but if you click on Show More, you can start to play around with some of these other filters that exist. So perhaps we want to limit this, let's say, to the last 10 years. We could have done that on the other page there, but let's just pop this in now since it's here. And then a few things. Research would just bring up research articles. Evidence-based practice, I talked about this in the Zoom class, and I don't really know what's happening behind the scenes in CINAHL to bring up these articles. Meaning I don't know if it's set to bring up RCTs and systematic reviews only, or is it also including case studies? I'm not really sure, but it is a filter that's there, and it should, in theory, be bringing up evidence-based practices. But again, I'm not quite sure, how it's designed behind the scenes. Let's see. Going over here, the clinical queries, that's similar to what we looked at in PubMed, where these are set up to match all of the evidence-based practice questions. So, for example, let's say we want to find some therapy articles to see if the intervention of the cochlear implants, if it works well. And so there's this highly sensitive, which means it's going to bring up more articles, highly specific, a smaller set, and then the balance is right in between. So I usually go with that. Clicking search, and we're going to get a smaller set of articles. And so in this case, we have 117. That's still quite a lot, and I might not be super excited about going through that many. I definitely wouldn't. So if that happens, I would probably make this a smaller date period. We can say 2000. Oops, what did I just do? Sorry. I don't know what happened there. But from here, we could change the date to something smaller. So a smaller time period. So here we have 27, and I could imagine going through 27 articles. But let me go back to that limits page. And so if I turn this off, go back to the default, clicking on all, I just want to point out that there are also publication types. So just like in Medline and in PubMed, you can start to limit to randomized controlled trials, and then you could click search and see how many RCTs are out there on the topic, and in this case there aren't any. And that might be more of a date period or an ethical reason as to why there aren't any RCTs on this topic. Probably more ethics, I'm gonna guess. But maybe we can find instead, since there aren't any RCTs, perhaps we can try and see if there are any systematic reviews. And yes, there are systematic reviews. And so that will be a review of other original studies. So that can be a nice place to learn about what's been happening in research in this particular field. And this will give you access to lots of other articles, and it's considered one of the highest levels of evidence. One last thing I'll mention, if I go back here to the Show More, go back to the default, selecting all of them. That evidence-based practice is an option. Again, I'm not sure exactly what's happening behind the scenes, but play around with it and see what sort of articles. Here's a systematic review, and see what sort of articles come up. They should be, in theory, high levels of evidence. Going back to this limits page, if I turn that off, I also did want to mention that I believe it's under journal subset. Is it under journal subset? Nope. must be under special interest. There is a speech language special interest category right here. And so what that's doing, if I were to select that, it's supposed to be bringing up articles that are published in journals that focus on this interest area. I don't know that it works so great, but it is there, and I just wanted to mention it to you that that's something that you could play around with and see what happens. Our topic here is clearly very directly related to the special interest group of hearing and cochlear implants. But if we were doing a different search on, let's say, traumatic brain injury, then limiting to that special interest might be really interesting to see what sort of articles come up. All right, that's all I'm going to say about CINAHL for now. Thank you.